Here's the card we're going to be making for our first Manic Monday. So let's get started. So what you'll need to make this card is you'll need a piece of Blackberry Bliss. This is cut at 4 1/4 by 11, and it's scored at 5 1/2. You'll need a piece of crumb cake that's cut at 4 inches by 5 1/4. You'll need a piece of Whisper White for the inside, and this is cut at 4 by 5 1/4 inches. And then you need a scrap of Lost Lagoon and a scrap of Whisper White. So let's go ahead and fold our Blackberry Bliss to make our card base. Get your bone folder. Let's get to stamping. So the stamp pads that you're going to need are Blackberry Bliss, Lost Lagoon, and Tangelo Twist. And for this, I'm going to get a piece of scrap paper to do my stamping on. And the first image we're going to stamp is from this stamp set, Garden and Bloom. We're going to use the flower image, the larger butterfly image, and then this smaller flower. And we're going to first stamp this flower in, and I've got the wrong color cardstock. You want your crumb cake. And the first color we're going to stamp is Lost Lagoon using the large flower. Ink your stamp pad up. And then you just want to randomly stamp the flower. Okay, then you're going to want to make sure you clean this stamp really well because we're going to use it again. So off camera here I have my Stampin' Scrub, and I just spray the Stampin' Scrub with a little bit of the stamping mist to clean it, and then I usually come back and kind of wipe it down with a microfiber cloth. Okay, you can set that one aside. So the next image we're going to stamp is the butterfly image. We're going to stamp that in Blackberry Bliss. Again, clean your stamp off really well. I'm going to just wipe it down again with my rag that I keep off to the side. We can set that image to the side. And next we're going to stamp our small flower in Tangelo Twist. Again, clean your stamp. I'm going to wipe it off. Okay, now the next stamping that we're going to do is we're going to restamp all of these images, but in our craft pad, our Whisper White craft pad. And we're going to stamp off to the side. And that gives, if you can see on this sample here, that gives the white halo to all the images. So we'll do our flower first. You want to get that nice and inked up with the white pigment. And then you need to line the stamp up with the first image. And then just move it slightly off to the side and then stamp down. So that the white image is almost over the colored image, but off to the side. All right? And you want to do that with all the rest of it. And remember, this craft ink is a pigment ink, so it does stay wet longer than your typical ink pads. So when you are using this ink, you do want to be careful that you don't get it all over yourself or your clothes, and that you don't smear it. So when you're stamping, with this pigment ink, just remember that it dries. It takes a lot longer to dry, and I usually will, once I'm done with all this stamping, I will heat it with the heat tool, just to make sure that it's nice and dry. Something else to keep in mind is, you know, as we're stamping off, all of this ink that's on this background piece of paper here is also wet. So just be careful that you don't touch it and then smear it on your project. I'm going to clean this after we're done with the video, so I'll set it aside. So we'll start with the butterfly next. Same thing, you just want to ink it up with your white pigment ink and line it up over the image and stamp it to the side. For stamping this piece, I am going to set this piece to the side, and then we'll do our sentiments. So let me set this to the side. Next, you want to grab your piece of scrap Whisper White cardstock, and I am actually going to move this wet piece of paper so that we don't transfer any of that wet ink onto our project. Okay. We are going to stamp this in Blackberry Bliss, and we are using the happy birthday image from the Cottage Greetings. And I'm going to just line my sentiment up on my grid here so I can try to stamp it as straight as possible. That doesn't always work out, but luckily we're going to be die cutting this so we can move our die if we need to get it to look straight in the center. Alright. I might have got a little too much ink on that, so we'll see. Hopefully it stamps okay. Sorry, my dog is in the room with me and he is making a lot of noise. Okay. Cut it out using one of these Lawn Fawn dies. These are the stitched rectangle dies, and they come in 4 different shapes. I really love these stitch dies, and I wish Stampin' Up! Would come out with some, but I love these Lawn Fawn rectangle stitch dies. So we're going to be using the smallest one to cut out the happy birthday. And then we're also going to be cutting out the small butterfly from the Bold Butterfly framelits. We're going to be cutting this out in the Lost Lagoon. So this one right here. Now whenever you're using some of these die cuts that have a lot of these tiny pieces, I find that taking a piece of wax paper and layering that between the die and the piece of cardstock allows you to get a crisper die cut, and then these small tiny pieces seem to fall out easier. So that's my trick. So I'm going to step off to the side and die cut both of these, and then I'll be right back. So now we have our cute butterfly and our happy birthday sentiment cut out. See the faux stitched border that die creates. I just love that die. Okay, so now we can assemble our card. So I am a little worried that this hasn't dried yet, so I am going to go ahead and heat it with my heat tool just to make sure that all that pigment ink is dry before we start putting the card together and possibly smear it. So I'm going to give it some heat here. Okay, just going to test it out to see if it's dry. Still a little bit sticky, but I think we can go ahead and proceed with putting the card together. So let's get our Blackberry Bliss card base, and you're going to want to use your Project Life corner rounder and round all the corners of your card base and then this layer that we just stamped. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. And then when I put cards like this together that I know I'm going to have to line up perfectly, I like to have a little bit of wiggle room. So I always use the Tombow Mono Multi Liquid Glue. This gives me a few seconds to play around with the paper to make sure that it's lined up perfectly. So just give that a nice bit of glue there. And then we're going to layer this on our card base, making sure that we get it right in the middle so that all the sides are lined up. And that's where having the wiggle room comes in. So just because this might be a little bit wet, I'm just going to take my cloth and press it down to make sure that it adheres, and didn't want to get that stamp all over my fingers. Okay. So next you're going to want to add some foam adhesive on the back. I like to use the 3M foam adhesive. It comes in this humongous roll like this that lasts forever, but I really do. I like this adhesive. It's easy to tear apart, and it's easy to get the backing off, which makes it very easy to use. So you want to put a strip of the foam tape on the back, and then one extra little piece that we're going to use to attach our thread. So you want to put a tiny little piece of adhesive, foam adhesive, right up here at the top. And then we're going to use our gold thread. And whenever I'm adding gold thread to projects, this is how I do it. I just take it with my thumb and my first two fingers, and I wrap it around a few times, depending on how much I want on my project. Well, here at the end, cut off any excess. And I'm going to attach that right to this little piece of foam adhesive that we've put here on the back. And then we can layer that onto our card. Okay, the next is we're going to want to add our butterfly, and you can just use your mono liquid glue for this as well. So just add a little bit to the back. I like to take my butterfly and bunch it up like that. You can add that to the corner. Then the last finishing touch is we're going to add a few of the pearls to the center of the butterfly. So we're just going to take this string of pearls here, cut it at where we can grab 3. We're just going to add that to the middle, the butterfly. And then the last finishing touch is you can add your layer in the center where you can stamp either another sentiment or add your note. So again, because we're going to be layering and we want to make sure that it's even on all 4 sides, you know, I like to use the mono liquid glue, but let's go ahead and also use the corner rounder on the inside as well, so it will layer nice. Okay, give it some glue. All right, okay. And there you have it. That is your Manic Monday card for this week. Thanks for stopping by. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. I'm going to be trying to do a Manic Monday video every Monday for you. So see you next week.